in more than a couple of presentations, you have probably wondered this question yourself. What part of my story should I tell? Oh my gosh, what an interesting question. What part of the story should you tell? Let's ask ourselves a couple of questions. Okay, because we're talking about, if you're talking to your family, obviously you don't need to give them a whole lot of background on yourself. They know you inside, outside, they know you 100%, right? But if you're talking to strangers, we have to give them a reason to listen to us, right? We have to give them a reason to their ear instead of scrolling or whatever the other million things they have to do, right? They want to know that you're somebody that they can learn something from. There's a reason for them to listen to you. So we want to know, how well does your audience know you? And you can go anywhere from family all the way up to complete strangers. And then you'll have to give a little more background. The less they know you, the more background you give. The more they know you, the less background you give, right? Very simple. Step number 2, though, how long is your presentation, right? We've got to consider how long the presentation is. If the presentation is really short, you're not going to have a whole lot of time to tell your backstory. You're not going to have a lot of time to give them a bunch of information. However, if you have a full 60-minute keynote presentation, guess what? You can give a little more background and tell several more stories, right? Now, step number 3. We'll get to step number 3 here in just a second. But when we're talking about telling stories, or what part of your story you should tell, I probably should give a reason to listen to me, right? Because right now, those of you who are listening to me probably know me or know me very little, right? I'll tell you that I come from a retail marketing background, a retail background. Spent a lot of years running retail stores and running sales teams for the last 30 years. Been a long time, right? But 21 years ago, I started a deep dive process into personal growth and development, but it started by learning communications. It started by trying to figure out how to improve my confidence. And the number one thing that helped me improve my confidence was public speaking, was getting in front of an audience, was learning how to speak to more than just one person. Because it was crazy. I was that guy who would drive around in the car all day and never engage with people because I was afraid that they were going to reject me. I still had the high school mindset. And I don't know if any of you still feel that way, or feel like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me? Ask them this question, or what are they going to think of me if I try to sell them this thing? And they, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if they tell me no? The answer is already no, right? But if you're still in that mindset from high, nobody was really pushing me in that direction. I had to start reading books. Stands up, he says, look, guys, you got to do 2 things every day. Go to Fantasy Island, number 1, and number 2, you have to read 30 minutes a day. By starting to read books, the first 2 books I pulled out, man, both of them, I can talk to 1 or I can talk to 10,000. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, because they all put their pants on the one leg at a time. And chances are I know more about this process than almost all of them. Why? Because I spent the last 21 years studying it and living it, right? Hundreds and hundreds of presentations. So the process, how much of our story do we tell? We want to give some background so that people understand who we are and where we're coming from, and give them a reason to listen to us, right? And again, we're considering, is it family or strangers? We're considering how long is the presentation? I guess this could go all night, but I'm not gonna make it last probably longer than 10 minutes, right? And then number 3 is, what part of your story is actually relevant? What part of your story is relevant to the audience that you're presenting to? Because if you want to know, what do you want your audience? I borrow this from Darren LaCroix. He says, look, what do you want your audience to think, feel, or do differently as a result of listening to you? So if we consider that question, what do you want your audience to think, feel, or do differently as a result of listening to you? Then we will choose the story that will help transform their thinking to something better. All right, we want to transform their mind in some way, transform their heart, transform their soul. In some way, we want to affect them so that when they leave, they're better than they were when they listened to what you had to say. Very important. But why did I get into this process? The reason I teach personal leadership skills now and communication skills now is because of what this process did for me. It was crazy how just, it's embarrassing to even talk about how afraid I was to talk to people. It's embarrassing, right? Because who does that? Well, I did for a long time, and it cost me a lot of money. And more importantly, it cost me self-respect, right? It cost me self-respect. It cost me confidence. And how much, if you suffer from low confidence, how much does that cost you in the long run? What bold decisions do you not make because you're afraid? Right? So these are things we've got to consider. But anyways, what part of your story are you going to stewardship so that their teams will take personal responsibility for their own growth and development? What in the world, people stewardship? What are you talking about? Here's what I recognized in retail and in many of the other businesses that I've worked in, is that when someone is promoted, they're promoted because they're great at what they do. But they don't know anything about leadership. They're not leading themselves well at home, and then they come to work and expect to be able to lead others well, and they've never even learned how to communicate. It's crazy. Sometimes they get triggered by everything, which if you're triggered by everything, how are you calm enough and relaxed enough to listen to what your people are trying to tell you as to why things happen, or that we didn't, as leaders, teach them the full process of what they needed to know? We didn't walk them through step by step so that they would get it, right? So when we start looking at a lot of the issues in leadership, it's the fact that we didn't communicate effectively. And because we didn't communicate effectively, our new leaders failed because we didn't teach them, number one, how to communicate. We didn't teach them what to communicate. We didn't teach them why to communicate. They're just doing their own thing. And then we expect them to be successful when we didn't do our part, right? So what I want to do is help people embrace that people stewardship, treating them like human beings, like family. Why? Because they are, right? Every single person that comes to work, they come to work because they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Yeah, they want a paycheck. But you know what? If we enroll them into the vision of the company, we enroll them into how they are doing something meaningful, you know what happens? Not only do they get a paycheck, but they're giving you their blood, sweat, and tears because they're working for something that is meaningful. They're working for something that's far greater than just paycheck, right? They're invested with their heart and their soul. But if we treat people like garbage, think about this. When was the last time you were treated like family at work? When was the last time you were treated like yesterday's garbage at work? Now, it may not be like that every day. It may be the fact that you have a couple of different managers. One is managing and treats you like yesterday's garbage, and another one is leading and treats you like God's gift to the world. But who do you work harder for? The one that's demanding but treats you with honor and respect, or the one that comes in and just is the chief dictator, right? Who do you work harder for? We already know, right? We already know. And we experience this every single day. In fact, we all know that the number one reason why people leave employers, shoot, it's not for money. It's not for more money. No, it's for poor leadership. They leave bad leaders to go find better ones. Because that's it. That's what it's about, guys. So if we want to be better leaders, we've got to be better communicators. And we've got to have more one-on-one communication with our teams. One-on-one with each individual. Time spent building relationships, right? And then time with our teams. Building relationships. Telling our stories. What part of our stories do we tell them? The relevant parts. The parts that are going to help them move forward. The parts that are going to help them transform and change in some way, right? Those are the things we talk about. Those are the things we share. And yeah, we're talking about getting vulnerable sometimes. We're talking about putting it out there that you haven't always been at the top, right? We're putting it out there that you were a scared little duckling at one time, right? And then share the process that you went through to go from that scared duckling to where you are now. Teach them the process so that they can come along with you. All right, I hope this is helpful for you today. If you like it, subscribe to it, hit the little bell so that you're notified every time we go live. I'm going to try to do these every single day. And I hope to see you guys on here live tomorrow.